Food has become so scarce that starving citizens fight each other for a single bite, while riots spread across the streets like wildfire. Instead of solving the crisis, the ruthless government announces a horrifying new law. Every pregnant woman in the country must be executed to reduce future mouths to feed. When Mia and her husband Chuck hear the announcement, their entire world shatters in an instant. Mia is carrying their unborn child, turning them into immediate targets. With no time to waste, they gather every coin and possession they own, handing everything to a smuggler who promises to secretly transport pregnant women out of the country. Soon they find themselves packed inside a suffocating steel container with more than 20 terrified mothers-to-be, praying this desperate escape will lead them toward freedom instead of death. As the truck rumbles through the broken nation, the air inside the sealed container becomes almost impossible to breathe. One desperate young woman punches a tiny hole through the metal wall and presses her face against it, gasping for precious oxygen before peeking outside. What she sees sends chills through everyone listening. Crowds are clashing violently over food, while innocent children and pregnant women sit locked inside cages, awaiting execution. Moments later, the truck stops to collect even more refugees. Panic erupts as families shove and scream, desperate for a place inside. During the chaos, Mia is knocked to the ground, while Chuck is pushed out of the container by the crushing crowd. The driver fires a warning shot into the air before directing the extra passengers toward another truck, marked with the number 107. Chuck desperately tries to climb back into Mia's truck, shouting that his pregnant wife is still inside, but no one listens. The heavy doors slam shut between them, leaving the couple separated with nothing but fear. Before the trucks move again, Mia quickly memorizes the number painted on Chuck's new container and calls him. Chuck calms her trembling voice, promising that the moment he finds an opportunity, he will come back for her. He begs her not to trust strangers and to protect their belongings at all costs. Their heartbreaking conversation is suddenly interrupted when military forces stop the convoy for inspection. The soldiers question the driver, demanding to know exactly what is hidden inside the container. Although the smuggler confidently presents official paperwork and insists it contains nothing but cargo, the suspicious commander refuses to believe him. The container doors swing open, revealing only neatly stacked boxes. At first glance, everything appears ordinary, but the commander senses something is wrong. His instincts tell him there is more behind those innocent-looking crates than anyone is willing to admit. Determined to uncover the truth, the commander walks deep inside the container, while another soldier follows his orders precisely. He instructs the second soldier to fire a single shot. The bullet echoes through the container, but the commander immediately notices something impossible. The gunfire came from the middle of the trailer, even though he is standing at the very back. Realizing there must be a hidden compartment behind the cargo, he searches more carefully until he hears the faint, trembling breaths of terrified women. Speaking with false kindness, he promises that the army only wants to help and urges them to come out safely. After a long silence, one frightened woman gathers enough courage to believe him. The moment she steps into view, the commander shoots her directly in the forehead. Her body crashes to the floor as every remaining woman realizes they have been trapped by a cruel lie. Chaos explodes inside the hidden compartment. Soldiers storm in and receive a single merciless order: kill every pregnant woman. Gunfire tears through the darkness as bullets rip apart the cramped space, turning it into a horrifying bloodbath. Amid the massacre, Mia climbs silently onto the stacked cargo above the hidden chamber, pressing herself flat against the ceiling. By pure luck, the soldiers only fire at the lower section of the compartment, never realizing someone is hiding above them. She doesn't dare breathe, knowing the slightest sound will reveal her position. After the soldiers become convinced that everyone is dead, they lock the container once again and leave. Alone in absolute silence, surrounded by lifeless bodies, Mia finally exhales in relief before sending Chuck a trembling voice message. Fighting back tears, she tells him everyone else has been murdered, but somehow she has survived. The nightmare is far from over. Mia's container is loaded onto a massive cargo ship alongside countless others bound for an unknown destination. Hours later, deep in the middle of the ocean, a violent storm slams into the vessel with overwhelming force. Towering waves throw shipping containers into the sea like children's toys. Inside her steel prison, Mia is hurled violently from wall to wall until she loses consciousness. When she finally wakes, icy seawater is slowly pouring inside through bullet holes left by the soldiers. Looking through the tiny opening, she realizes there is no land anywhere, only endless ocean and scattered floating containers. Trapped alone, pregnant, without food, without a key, and surrounded by rising water, Mia immediately seals the bullet holes using tape she had been carrying, stopping the deadly flood before searching the surrounding cargo for anything that might help her survive. When Mia regains control of herself, she knows panic will only speed up her death. The seawater is still pressing against the steel walls, and every passing minute feels like another step toward the bottom of the ocean. She quickly seals the bullet holes with strips of tape before searching every wooden crate stacked inside the container. One by one, she forces the boxes open, praying to find food, water, or even a simple tool that could help her escape. Instead, she discovers nothing but electronic gadgets and empty food containers, each useless item crushing her hopes even further. Yet she refuses to stop searching. Then one final crate catches her attention. Balancing carefully, she stretches toward it and prees it open with a knife, only to discover more empty lunchboxes. At that exact moment, horrifying screams echo across the ocean. Looking through the tiny opening in the steel wall, Mia watches Container 107, the very container carrying Chuck, slowly disappear beneath the waves. Within seconds, it vanishes completely into the dark sea. Believing her husband has drowned before her eyes, every ounce of hope inside her shatters, leaving her trapped in complete despair. The unbearable grief consumes Mia from the inside. Certain that Chuck is gone forever, she no longer sees a reason to keep fighting. Tears stream down her face as she raises the knife toward her own wrist, ready to end the endless suffering. But just before she can make the fatal cut, her hand freezes. She remembers the innocent child growing inside her, a tiny life that has done nothing wrong. Realizing that ending her own life would also steal her baby's future, Mia slowly lowers the blade. Completely exhausted, she curls into the driest corner of the container, clutching a worn photograph of her young daughter as memories of happier days flood her mind. Eventually, sleep overtakes her, but even her dreams offer no peace. She suddenly awakens in terror, believing the container has already filled with water, only to discover it was a nightmare. Unfortunately, reality remains just as frightening. The tape covering the bullet holes has begun peeling away, allowing seawater to pour inside once again. Every new leak reminds her that time is running out. Determined not to surrender, Mia studies the scattered lunchboxes more carefully and notices the thick rubber seals wrapped around each lid. An idea flashes across her mind. She removes the rubber strips, cuts them into smaller pieces, and firmly presses them into every leaking bullet hole, creating a far stronger seal than before. For the first time since becoming stranded, the rising water finally slows. To keep herself from losing track of time, she begins marking the container wall, counting each passing day in isolation. Desperate for help, she repeatedly tries calling for rescue, but there is no signal anywhere in the endless ocean. Even if someone answered, she knows the government's cruel law would condemn her the moment they discovered she was pregnant. Searching through her backpack, she finds a lighter, a thermos, and a small supply of food. Then, against all odds, her silent phone suddenly begins ringing. With trembling hands, Mia answers and hears Chuck's familiar voice. He reveals that he never drowned with Container 107. He escaped before reaching the ship and somehow survived. Fighting back tears, Mia explains that she is trapped inside a drifting container, surrounded by nothing but open sea and slowly rising water. Chuck refuses to let despair take over. Speaking with every ounce of strength he has, he promises Mia that he will find a way to rescue her no matter how impossible it seems. He begs her to stay alive and never lose hope. Their emotional conversation is cut short when her phone battery suddenly dies, leaving only silence once again. Before Mia can even process the loss of communication, intense pain tears through her body. The contractions become stronger with every passing minute. Alone in the middle of the ocean, without medicine, without help, and trapped inside a steel container, she realizes she is about to give birth. Enduring unimaginable agony, Mia fights through wave after wave of pain until, at last, the cries of a newborn baby fill the cramped space. She gives birth to a beautiful baby girl. Instead of relief, a terrifying realization settles over her. She is no longer fighting only for herself. Every decision she makes from this moment forward will determine whether both mother and daughter survive this endless ocean. The newborn's cries grow louder as hunger quickly takes over. Mia gently cradles her daughter, singing soft lullabies in a desperate attempt to calm her, before finally realizing the baby simply needs milk. After feeding her child, Mia carefully builds a small wooden cradle from loose planks inside the container, lifting the baby above the steadily rising water. But survival demands more than comfort. She desperately searches every corner for something capable of opening the steel prison. Suddenly, her eyes fall upon an electric drill hidden among the cargo. A spark of hope returns. She grabs the tool and immediately begins drilling hole after hole through the roof of the container, determined to cut an escape hatch before the ocean claims them both. Piece by piece, the metal weakens, and freedom finally seems within reach. Then, without warning, the drill suddenly stops. The battery is dead. Mia desperately shakes the machine and strikes it against the floor, but it refuses to come back to life, leaving her hope hanging by a thread. Refusing to surrender, Mia grabs a knife and continues cutting through the weakened steel by hand. Every scrape drains what little strength she has left, yet she keeps pushing forward for the sake of her newborn daughter. At last, the roof is nearly free, but fate strikes again. The knife suddenly snaps in half, leaving the broken blade lodged in the metal. Frustration overwhelms her as she pounds against the roof with her bare hands, trying to tear the opening apart through sheer determination, but the steel refuses to give way. Meanwhile, her remaining food is almost gone, and hunger steadily weakens her body. Even if she escapes the container, she wonders whether starvation will simply finish what the ocean started. As darkness falls, a violent storm surrounds the drifting prison. A massive whale brushes against the container, sending it crashing violently through the waves and waking the terrified baby. Mia pounds on the metal walls until the giant creature finally swims away. Moments later, she notices tiny drops of fresh rainwater slipping through the holes above. Realizing this could mean survival, she presses her lips against the opening and places empty containers beneath the leaks, collecting every precious drop of rain while praying the storm has arrived just in time. The hunger inside Mia's body grows more painful with every passing hour, but an even greater threat surrounds her from every direction. Her food has almost completely run out, and even if she manages to escape the steel prison, starvation may claim both her and her newborn before rescue ever arrives. As darkness blankets the endless ocean, a violent storm crashes overhead. Suddenly, something enormous slams against the drifting container. A massive whale brushes past the steel walls, shaking the entire structure with terrifying force and throwing Mia across the cramped space. Her sleeping baby wakes instantly, crying in fear as the container groans under the impact. Desperate to protect her child, Mia pounds frantically against the metal walls until the giant creature finally disappears into the darkness. Soon afterward, she notices tiny drops of fresh rainwater slipping through the hole she drilled into the roof. Realizing this is the first clean water she has seen in days, she presses her lips against the opening, catching every precious drop before carefully placing empty containers beneath the leaks. Every single drop becomes priceless, the only thing standing between life and death in the endless sea. Although the rain offers temporary relief, Mia knows it will never be enough. She struggles to collect every drop inside empty lunchboxes and bottles, understanding that the storm could disappear at any moment. As she searches through the remaining supplies, her eyes fall upon a metal food can. Just as she begins opening it, another idea flashes through her exhausted mind. If she can use the can's pull ring to rip open its lid, perhaps she can tear open the weakened roof of the container the very same way. Without wasting another second, she ties a strong rope through the sharp hole she drilled earlier and braces herself for one final attempt. Every muscle in her body screams in agony as she pulls with every ounce of strength she has left. The steel resists stubbornly, refusing to break, but Mia refuses to stop. Her hands bleed, her throat burns from dehydration, and her body trembles from exhaustion. Then, with one final desperate pull, the damaged roof suddenly begins tearing apart. Bright sunlight bursts through the opening for the first time in days, washing over Mia's face like a miracle. After nearly 5 endless days trapped inside darkness, she finally sees the open sky again, and for the first time since the nightmare began, hope returns. Realizes rescue may still be impossibly far away. While changing her baby's diaper, she tosses the used cloth into the water. Within moments, schools of fish begin gathering around it. Watching them swarm together sparks a new survival plan. If the fish are coming this close to the container, perhaps she can catch them and stay alive. Wasting no time, Mia builds a crude spear by fastening a sharp piece of metal onto the end of a long pole and securing it tightly with rope. She waits patiently, watching every movement beneath the surface before launching the weapon toward the fish. The spear slices into the water again and again, but every attempt misses its target. Even after countless throws, not a single fish is caught. Exhausted as Mia lies beneath the blazing sun, something suddenly catches her attention high above the ocean. An airplane is flying across the distant sky. Adrenaline instantly surges through her body as she scrambles back inside the container, searching desperately for anything reflective. She finds a dark piece of broken glass and climbs painfully back onto the roof, waving it frantically toward the aircraft in hopes of catching the pilot's attention. In her desperate rush, the jagged edge of the torn steel slices deeply into her thigh, leaving a painful wound that quickly begins bleeding. Ignoring the agony, she continues flashing the glass toward the plane with every bit of strength she has left. But the aircraft is simply too high above the ocean. The tiny reflection disappears beneath the vastness of the sea, and the plane continues flying toward the horizon without ever noticing her existence. Heartbroken but unwilling to quit, Mia bandages her injured leg using scraps of cloth before turning her attention back to the slowly sinking container. Water continues filling the lower section, so she begins scooping it out bottle by bottle, knowing that every bucket she removes buys them a little more time to survive. Hour after hour, Mia repeats the exhausting routine of bailing water from the container while caring for her newborn daughter. Every task drains the little energy she has left, but surrender is never an option. During one long night, another idea slowly begins taking shape. She gathers dozens of unused earbud cables scattered among the cargo and carefully knots them together into a homemade fishing net. By sunrise, her trembling hands have finally completed the fragile trap. Carrying it onto the roof, she lowers the net into the sea before tossing her baby's used diaper nearby as bait. She waits in complete silence, watching schools of fish circle curiously around the floating cloth. Minutes feel like hours as the fish hesitate to enter the net. Then at last, one swims directly inside. Mia instantly jerks the rope upward, pulling the net onto the container roof with a fresh fish trapped inside. After nearly 5 days of starvation, she finally has real food. She catches several more fish, storing them carefully in empty containers, while thanking fate for giving her and her baby another chance to survive. The call that briefly restored Mia's hope quickly becomes the most heartbreaking moment of her life. Fighting through tears, she tells Chuck that she is still alive on the drifting container, and that, against every impossible circumstance, she has given birth to their beautiful baby girl. Her voice trembles as she asks him the only question that matters: will he come and save them? For several agonizing seconds, Chuck says nothing. Then, with fading strength, he reveals the truth he has been hiding. While escaping from the soldiers, he was shot. Although he managed to avoid capture, the wound has stolen too much blood, and he knows his time is running out. Mia's world collapses all over again. The man she loves most is dying, powerless to reach her. Overcome with grief, she places the phone beside their newborn so Chuck can hear his daughter one last time. Through a weakening voice, he softly speaks to the child he will never hold, pouring every ounce of his love into his final words. His voice grows quieter with every breath until complete silence fills the call. Chuck is gone. Mia is left floating alone in the endless ocean, carrying not only the weight of survival, but also the unbearable pain of losing the love of her life. With food finally secured, Mia turns her thoughts toward rescue once again. She seals handwritten messages inside empty lunchboxes before throwing them into the sea, praying that ocean currents will carry them to passing ships somewhere beyond the horizon. Days pass in complete isolation as she watches the endless waves, wondering whether Chuck is still alive. Then, against all expectations, her damaged phone suddenly begins ringing once more. The cracked touchscreen barely responds, forcing her to struggle before finally answering the call. Chuck's weak voice fills the silence. Fighting back tears, Mia tells him she is still stranded on the floating container and reveals that she has given birth to their beautiful baby girl. She begs him to come and save them, but Chuck falls silent before revealing the heartbreaking truth. While escaping from the soldiers, he was shot. Although he managed to avoid capture, he has lost too much blood and knows he is dying. Mia breaks down as the love of her life tells her he no longer has the strength to rescue them. Through sobs, she places the phone beside their newborn so Chuck can hear his daughter one final time. His fading voice gently speaks to his child before slowly disappearing forever. The call ends in complete silence, leaving Mia alone with unbearable grief, but also with one final reason to keep fighting: the tiny life resting safely in her arms. With tears still streaming down her face, Mia forces herself to think about her daughter's safety. Using scraps of wood and several plastic containers, she carefully builds a tiny floating cradle that will keep the baby above the water if disaster strikes. She gently lays her daughter inside and secures the small raft with a long rope tied firmly around her own wrist. Just then, a seabird lands beside her, pecking at the leftover pieces of fish scattered across the container. Mia watches the bird carefully before a new realization fills her mind. Birds rarely wander far from land. If one has reached her, then somewhere beyond the endless horizon there must be a shoreline. Hope begins flickering inside her once again. But before she can celebrate, another nightmare unfolds. Water has risen dangerously high inside the container, placing enormous pressure on the weakened steel walls. Without warning, the entire structure rips apart beneath her. Mother and child are violently thrown into the raging ocean as waves tear them apart. Mia desperately screams her baby's name while struggling against the powerful currents, but the tiny raft disappears into the storm, leaving her surrounded by nothing but towering waves and crushing panic. The furious ocean shows no mercy. Mia battles wave after wave, desperately searching for the little raft carrying her daughter. Beneath the dark water, the massive shadow of a giant whale glides silently beneath her, sending terror racing through every nerve in her body. For one terrifying moment, she believes the enormous creature will swallow them both. Instead, the whale